It's Nat's Chat with Shannon Coates. Welcome, Shannon. Thank you for joining us. And we're looking forward to talking about teaching very young singers. I'm Kari Reagan, and I'm the Nat's Chat moderator and coordinator. And I would like to begin by thanking Inside View Press for their sponsorship of the Nat's Chats. And also a little plug for the Nats conference this summer in Vegas, June 22nd to the 26th. And please remember that the early bird registration ends April 1st. So hopefully we'll see many of you there. So I want to begin by just a brief bio of our wonderful Shannon, who is joining us from Toronto, Canada. And Shannon holds a DMA in vocal performance and specializes in voice pedagogy from the University of Toronto. She is currently the president of Ontario chapter of NATS and has presented her research worldwide. She also currently teaches pedagogy at the University of Toronto and maintains a private studio. One of her specialties is teaching other voice teachers. So, as I said, we're here tonight to talk about teaching very young singers. So, welcome, Shannon.
Thank you.
I would love to begin by just having you share a little bit about your journey of how you came to both specialize in children, but, you know, of course, all the way up through your doctorate in voice pedagogy.
Well, so I did an undergraduate in, we're going to go back a little ways, but I promise we'll get through it quick. I did an undergraduate degree in voice performance at the University of Toronto, and took an undergraduate pedagogy course then. But of course, like so many of my current students, thought that I would never use it because I was going to be a singer. So I didn't teach at all. I didn't do anything with that, and I actually didn't sing for about 10 years. So I did a couple of other things. And when I came back to singing, it was actually through teaching. When my daughter was born 15 years ago, I was working in finance, and I was really bored. Although if I think about it now, I think about how much money I might be making if I was. But anyway, that's not to think about that because I would be really bored. So I thought well, this is the opportunity when I have this maternal leave. That's the opportunity to see whether I like teaching. People had asked for lessons for a long time. And so I took on a few students and loved it. I just loved it, and really quickly figured out that I didn't know what I was doing. So then I heard about the master's program at the University of Toronto in voice pedagogy, and it had been a long time since I had taken any lessons myself, so I started to take some lessons and auditioned and got into that program. And then after doing the master's, then I did the doctorate. So I just sort of continued on. And the whole time I was doing that, of course, I was also teaching at the same time. And then I also progressed from being a teaching assistant for the pedagogy courses there to teaching the course. And I also teach a undergrad voice ped course at another university in Ontario as well. So all of that kind of progressed and kind of joined so that I have this, academic background in voice pedagogy, as well as this very practical side that is independent voice teaching as well. So so my love then is that crossroads where I'm sort of doing the actual work, of course, but teaching not necessarily the 20 to 25-year-olds, but everybody kind of on their way to university and down, and then everybody who is out of university and up, which is what independent studio teachers teach, as you know. So and so then that's been the sort of focus of my pedagogy courses as well. So especially because I'm teaching undergrads for the most part, they aren't going to be teaching academically anytime soon. So the course has a real focus toward the kinds of students that they will be encountering, which includes, of course, very young singers.
I love that. So you include this in the pedagogy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I imagine your finance experience helps you as an independent studio
Uh,
owner. Well,
you would think. Yeah, that's a whole other podcast or whatever we're doing. That's a whole other chat. Oh gosh, yeah, you would think.
I love that. I love to hear about people's journey to, where they end up specializing because there's so much in voice teaching. It is such a broad topic, and there's room for everybody to find what really excites them.
I agree.
Yeah. So let's start with the discussion about teaching very young singers. And I think we have to, of course, address what we can call alternative facts. We still hear people say young singers shouldn't teach or shouldn't sing, shouldn't study. And as I asked you in our pre-chat, what age are we talking about?
So I do a couple of things to sort of set that parameter for myself. And the first thing that I look for, well, let me just say, I feel like 5 is probably the minimum. For me personally, that's likely the minimum. So 6 is my most comfortable starting, and 5 is like, we'll see.
Okay.
And we're talking one-on-one lessons here as well, just to be clear about that, not group lessons. I'm talking one-on-one. So one-on-one voice lessons, what I'm looking for in terms of a young singer to take voice lessons and whether they're a good fit for my studio, I'm sort of looking at 2 parameters. One is whether their ability to focus matches their developmental ability, where they should be developmentally. So 6-year-old should be able to focus for about 6 minutes on one task, a 7-year-old for about 7 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. So when I have a young singer in my studio and we're just doing some trial work to see how they're working, I'm really looking to see how long they can focus. And if they're 7 years old and they cannot focus for 7 minutes on a task, say they can only go for 3 or 4, that's fine. It just means that I have to make the decision as to whether or not I want to take that student on or not. It's not that I'm not going to teach them. It's just that I know that that's going to be more work to prepare for that student, and it's going to be more work to teach that student engaged, just because their attention span is lower. And the second parameter that I'm looking for is how much parental involvement do they have? At that age, at the very young age spectrum, the parents really do need to be involved in order for them to progress well, or in order for them to feel like they're being successful. Unless, again, gets to be your decision. If you feel that the parent is not involved, then you need to just make that decision. How much education do you need to do for this parent? And are you willing to put in that work to do the education? Or are you happy with that student coming just for sort of glorified babysitting? Right? So it's not a bad thing or a good thing, really. It's just what you're willing to do and whether that student is going to be a good fit for you and for the amount of work that you're willing to put in. So you have to just be willing to recognize that. So those are the two parameters that I use. Whether or not a singer sings in tune, not an issue. That absolutely can be taught. Whether or not a singer sings loudly or quietly, or whether they can articulate well, all of that stuff, it can all be taught.
But very much like the phrase "sing from your diaphragm," we can be rid of that, and we can be rid of the notion that children shouldn't study.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we talked about the article, the 2003, is that right, Kari? Article from the American Academy of Teachers.
Yeah, 2002. I was just let me hold it up for people. Yeah. So the American Academy of Teachers of Singing published wonderful papers, and this one is entitled "Teaching Children to Sing," and it basically is saying, let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's accept that we can teach them, and it talks about some parameters.
Yeah, and I think the one line in that article that I find really useful is that they say at some point, I'm paraphrasing, but they say at some point, not only is it useful for young singers to take voice lessons, but it will help them to prevent damage further on in their lives, because they get that information and they get the good instruction early in their lives, and they will take that with them as they are progressing in their singing career. So not only is it good and useful for a young singer to take one-on-one voice lessons, it's also good and useful for them throughout their lives to prevent damage. This is, I mean, and Richard Miller was on that, was part of that paper. I mean, these are, you know, yeah, these are wonderful, respected pedagogues that who we can trust.
Well, and I love this sentence: the regardless of the categories of the singers, training should be in the hands of qualified teachers who understand both how to teach children and what to teach children. And I think that's really important. I think, I mean, not only understanding the physiological ramifications that we need to know before you start teaching children, but I think even more important than that is that you're a person who would understand how to relate to children. And as you and I discussed the other day, not my area.
And that's okay.
And that's okay, that it's not my area. I shared a very special story with Shannon that we won't repeat, but that it really brought that point home. And I appreciated that you didn't judge me for it.
No, David.
And do you feel that you are, do you feel judgment? There was something I read that you wrote that kind of implied that maybe teachers that teach children feel judged by other teachers. Do you feel that?
Well, I think if you look at any of the sort of online forums, you will see as soon as a teacher gets on there and says something like, "I'm going to be teaching my first 8-year-old blah blah blah, is there anything I can do, or is there anything you would suggest?" There are always going to be a couple of teachers on there saying things like, "Well, you should never teach an 8-year-old."
I always see those, yeah.
You know, so it's still out there, and it's still prevalent. And I think independent studio teachers have been teaching like secretly for a long time, because this can be our bread and butter. I mean, it really can. If this is something where you feel that you want to do and that you can do well, then there are a lot of young singers out there looking for voice lessons, especially since the sort of 2000s, when we started to get the voice programs and the talent shows coming to such prevalency. So now we have lots and lots of young singers who are not going to choirs and who are not taking piano lessons. They want singing lessons, and that's wonderful. And so independent teachers are filling that gap, and they should be. They absolutely should be. So it's time to not feel like there's a judgment factor involved with that. It's ridiculous. Stop it.
I love this. We have a question already, and for the attendees, please remember to type your questions. There's in the GoToWebinar control panel is a little question box that you can type your question to me privately. You can also raise your virtual hand, and I will open your mic momentarily for you to ask your question of Shannon. But please forgive me if I say your name wrong. Arles Alford. Since she says, since younger students do take more work, she agrees with that. Do you charge more for teaching younger students?
Such a good question. Oh my gosh. So and they absolutely do take more work. So I have relatively recently changed my pricing structure so that my young students are on packages or equalized billing, monthly equalized billing. There's lots of resources out there for that as well. And if you want to send me a message, feel free, and I can give you some information about changing that structure around. But it certainly is something to consider, whether you charge. And I think it's perfectly legitimate to say this half an hour of time is actually worth more than 2 half-hour times, if you will. So my 30-minute time slot is $35 and my 60-minute time slot is 60, for example. It should be more than that. But just so you see the example, I think that's perfectly absolutely acceptable. We see that in lots of other industries where the shorter time frame is actually a higher rate. Massages, for example, we see that in lots of other industries. And you're absolutely right that the young children take more work.
And is this work the more work both within the lesson and, of course, communication outside the lesson?
And preparation. They take more preparation. So you're looking for repertoire, of course, but you're also, so this is the other thing in terms of teaching young children. We want to set the lesson time up so that we have chunks of time where we're doing something a little bit different every time. So again, using the example of a 6-year-old. So if a 6-year-old has a 6-minute time span that they can focus on a task, for example, we're going to put a half-an-hour lesson, for example, into 5-minute chunks. Mm-hmm. So those 5-minute chunks, then you've got to be ready for those in advance. It's not like teaching, an adult or a teenager where you've got this rapport going where you've got, okay, we're going to work on ear training and then we're going to do a warm up or the other way around, or, and then we're going to work on these 3 pieces. This is where we have, 5 different things that we need to do in order to cover that half an hour of time. So you have to have those prepared in advance. Yes.
Right. Sorry, go ahead. I'm so sorry, Shannon.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Arliss, for that question, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name. We're getting lots of questions. I love this. This is great. So let's go to Grace Gorey, who asks, if you have a student who has not studied piano or another instrument and does not read music, do you teach them how to read music as part of your instruction for them?
So I absolutely do, and it's a great question, because it used to be that if you came to voice lessons, you had likely already been taking piano lessons for quite a while, right? So nowadays, though, no, we get a lot of students who have not studied piano or who are not studying piano simultaneously. So there are a couple of resources for this, and I did do we'll, I guess, put up the website or something like that, but I did do a blog with some resources in it. My favorite resource for this is the Full Voice series, and they're just www.thefullvoice.com, I think. There's a link on my blog, but anyway, so this is the main or one of the main differences between teaching voice and piano. Piano, there are so many curricula. I mean, there's so many series that you can use to teach piano, and there's really not much out there for voice. So this is a curriculum that was developed specifically for teaching young singers, and it involves solfege, ear training, sight reading, note reading, rhythm training, all of the basics, and it goes from very, very young singers up through. So it's a great series, and one that I use regularly.
And they can find that on your website, correct? At Shannon Coates.
Shannon-Coates.com. Yep.
Okay, great. And I think you answered this already, but I want to make certain that teaching younger students with shorter lessons is a good idea. And how long would you teach a child?
It's a good question. So personally, I have about 9 years old and under half-an-hour lessons, but I know a lot of people who do actually 45-minute lessons at that age. Just because if you've got the resources, you've got some things to teach, there's lots to do. There really can be. So personally, I like half an hour and less for about 8 to 9, and then and under, and then around 9, 10 years old is when I go to 45 minutes. And then by about 12, I'm at an hour.
Okay. Oh, by 12 years old, and are they singing that time, or some of that time is used for theory and ear training? And
always. So this comes up to another thing that is really important when we're working with young singers. We're doing all of the same things with young singers that we're doing with our adults or with our teenagers. We're teaching all of the same concepts. We're just doing it through play or indirectly. So yes, it involves theory. So it involves ta, 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 ta or TT, sorry, that was TT, not ta, but so it involves all the rhythmic stuff, but it's all play. If we're working on breathing, we're doing lots of. If we're doing, I mean, there's lots and lots of play, lots of moving that play into the repertoire. So if we're learning a song, then we're finding all of those rhythms that we just worked on as we were marching to the rhythms that we did earlier, or the rhythms that we did on our body earlier. Those are coming into the songs, or coming out of the songs. If there's a particular rhythm in a song that you know they're going to be working on, then that comes into the initial part of the lesson. Or say you're working on an octave in a song, then you're doing do, 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 do with your hand signs beforehand. And then, oh, look, it's in the song too. So all of the same things that you're working on, the same kind of integration that you're doing between repertoire and theory and technique, it's all happening the same way in a young voice. It's just a lot more fun and really indirect.
Yeah, the important point being that it's playtime to some degree. I mean, that the focus of learning comes through play.
Yes, and exploration and discovery. I mean, it's very similar to what we do in kindergarten. And, you know, not that I know really what we do in kindergarten, but what I observed when my children were in kindergarten and I volunteered, it's very similar to that kind of work that primary teachers are doing, where there definitely is structured time, but there's a lot of learning through play and exploration, and a lot of indirect learning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's take this question from Maria, I believe. She says, I am a very new and young teacher, just starting my career. So she says, excuse my simple question. There are no simple questions. Yeah. Well, what kind of voice technique is better to teach children? Singing into nasal cavity, head, and then she puts in parentheses, head voice, or with the pharynx, throat?
So that's a really good question, actually. One of the things that we want to just be careful about when we're teaching young singers is that we're really conscious of what the difference is physiologically in a young singer between a young singer and, say, a teenager, right? So when we're thinking about age 8-ish and under, possibly 10 and under, but definitely 8 and under, just keeping in mind that the vocal folds are very thin and they're very short, and the pharynx is very short and very narrow, because the larynx is so high and forward in physically, it's so high and forward, and the mouth is actually really small because the tongue is quite big. So the tongue is taking up a lot of space in the mouth. So we've got a very, very narrowed and very shortened resonators, and we have little tiny vocal folds. So the folds, and thin vocal folds. So the folds, the actual signal that the folds is giving, that sound signal, first of all, it's a high frequency. And then it may not have a lot of amplitude. There isn't that loud soft factor isn't necessarily there. And at least not to the same degree as it is in that older teenager. And that difference between head voice and chest voice, especially in the very young, so in the 6, 7, it may not be very noticeable. It may not be. It may be, but it may not be very noticeable, or it may not be to the same extent, again, that we would see in a teenager or a slightly older child. So all of those things coming together mean that really, again, we're coming back to that play and exploration. So we're not necessarily teaching head voice or chest voice or low high or anything like that. We're not necessarily teaching that. We're really looking more toward exploration. So what is your highest note? And not necessarily doing it like what is your highest note, but can you do rocket ships with me? So on my lips we're gonna go. So follow my hand to do the rocket ship. or something along those lines. And then we're just keeping in mind that when we're choosing repertoire, because the frequency that the folds are able to make is actually quite high, the range that they're able to sing is going to start at maybe a middle C, maybe a little lower, but likely only middle C, and stay within that octave because the musculature isn't necessarily mature enough yet to control the pitch range or to control pitch as well. So you may find that they're going to be most comfortable singing in sort of what we would consider maybe middle voice, or so we're looking at maybe C to C and maybe a little higher than that, maybe a D to D or an E to E. And this is boys and girls because they're basically the same at this age. In fact, they are pretty much exactly the same at this age. So that range then precludes a real head voice, chest voice kind of focus, if you will. Does that make sense?
That is a great answer and a really wonderful question, actually.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, the way that we approach with older people, you can't even think in those terms.
Not necessarily. Yeah, yeah.
And every time your whole rocket ship and all of that, I just think God bless all of you who do this. Because I mean that so sincerely. You are changing these children's lives and setting them up for a lifetime love of music. Because if you're not, especially if you don't go in and do it in such it's another thing to be very structured in their life and disciplined about, that it's actually a place to play. And yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for that great question.
That's great.
We have a comment from Leslie Martin who says, I've always thought that if very young children are being trained in sports, then they can be trained in singing as long as it is with a voice professional who understands what is happening in their physical, emotional, and brain development and teaches accordingly. Why should they be able to do sports or dancing but not singing?
Exactly.
Have you ever traced the origins where that started?
I haven't. Mm-hmm. I haven't. It's so interesting. I don't know. That's a really great question. And I don't know if anybody has. I don't know. That's something to think about.
Yeah, I'd be very curious.
Yeah, I'd be curious to note that. I'll tell you, I mean, I started taking voice lessons a few years back when I was 13. And I was quite early among my peers in my undergraduate program. That was quite early, actually, 13 to take voice lessons. Many of my peers who did my undergraduate program with me took lessons for, like 6 months before they got into the program. So that was, having taken lessons, voice lessons specifically since 13. I mean, many of my peers had taken piano lessons since they were very young, but voice lessons was quite the thing. But I'll tell you, I ask my voice ped classes now, I'll ask them, when did you start taking lessons? Was it like 16 and under, 15, 14, whatever? And it's younger. It's certainly younger. The majority of the class will have started taking lessons at 10, give or take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think we talked about this in the pre-chat, Shannon, but do you ever encourage like a group of 4 with children?
Yeah, I personally don't, but I think that just because I prefer one-on-one, but lots of great resources out there for group lessons. Again, you'll find some stuff on the Full Voice website there, but there are some great resources out there to do group lessons. And this is a great way to maximize your time and money. Frankly. So, and for parents to have a little bit, a little bit of a break on a price for lessons as well. And you can still get across a lot. I mean, it's still a very efficient way to teach young singers, especially very young. So if you're looking in the 5, 6, 7 age range, but older as well. But in that very young range, it's a very efficient way to teach.
It's great.
It's a lot of fun,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Brianne Rourke says, "Hi, Shannon. What is the most frustrating thing you've experienced with working with a very young singer?"
Frankly, the most frustrating thing is when the parents aren't involved. That's the most frustrating thing for me. I feel like I can negotiate a lot in a lesson, and I have children of my own, so I feel very comfortable working with children and maintaining kind of, fun, but also order and keeping things moving. But when the parent isn't involved or helping them practice, um, that's I find that the most frustrating.
You
Yeah.
must also have the opposite of that, though, the stage parent. Maybe you don't have that in Canada, but in America, big thing.
Oh, I think that happens everywhere. Yes, the opposite of that. So, I think on both sides of that equation, there's a certain amount of teaching that we have to do as teachers to teach those parents. I mean, there's a certain amount of education, sorry, that goes into ensuring that the parents understand what the role is and what your boundaries are. And I'm talking more specifically about stage parents, of course, but yeah, there's a certain amount of education that has to happen from our end, to make that relationship work well.
Mhm.
It's not my
Actually,
favorite.
this is a great segue. Kate Baker writes, I have dealt with many high-level singers at a young age. The emotional issue I found is huge with stage parents that make the singer at the age of 13 hit a rebellion. Once
Yeah.
they start winning contests as they are so gifted, so young, and so far above everyone else, that when they get to 16 and there is a catch up, is another emotional journey. How do you deal with that?
I agree, Kate. Hi. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And also the young singers who did really well young and they weren't working at it. But then all of a sudden, when the other singers catch up with them and start to, especially if they've developed early and they didn't have to work very hard to win all the time. And then, yeah, that catch up can be very difficult. I mean, I've had it go several different ways. So I've had it go the way where that student just cannot handle the fact that they are no longer at the top and cannot see that they are not putting in the work that is required now. I mean, they got away with it so long and now that work isn't there. So I've had that come, and that has required many months and in some cases years of talking with parents and children and just outlining, here's why you're not winning. I'm sorry. This is the reason. I mean, show me your practice log, show me what you've been working on, come in and show me what your warm-up routine is, and you'll know. I can tell you right away why it's no longer working for you. And also then there have been several students who actually have learned from that, though, and learned well and bounced back and done the work, started
Mhm.
putting the work. Is that what you mean, Kate? That it's sort of been easy for them the whole way through, and then suddenly they hit that wall where their peers catch up with them because their peers have maybe had to work, and then the work is bringing them to the same level?
While we wait for her to respond to that, this is Jeff Costello builds on Kate's question and comment
Mm.
and says, all teenagers need very strong parents who have very structured disciplines to keep the teenagers down to earth. Raising teens is not easy. Raising teens who are also stars is like exponentially more difficult.
I agree. I agree.
And
Yeah.
I think based on Kate's question, the way it read, it was exactly about that rebellion
Okay.
point. Let's.
Yeah.
Kathleen has a wonderful. We've got some great questions coming in. Thank you to the attendees. Will you please share the activities you include in the 5-minute chunks?
Yes, I would. Well, I should have brought some of my stuff over with me. Hold on, like give me like 5 seconds. Let me see what I got
Okay.
here. Just grab some.
Everybody sing something somewhere over the rainbow or something while we wait for Shannon.
Oh,
And
here we go. So lots of great things. Dun, dun, dun. I should have anticipated. I just should have anticipated that question and had it all here. Okay.
great. That was wonderful.
There are. So first of all, I have lots of gel pens in my studio, always, always, always. And sometimes we're drawing things. So we'll be drawing a fun breathing pattern, or we'll be drawing some kind of pattern that represents the song that we're singing. Or perhaps we're doing a scale and we're doing that. Or perhaps I'm asking them to draw what a vowel shape is. So, anyway, there's lots of drawing stuff happening, or can be. This is my new favorite one, and it's from the Full Voice. So this is a free downloadable thing from the Full Voice, where there are all these little games in little exercises that they can pick out of the jar. And so there's the first one that I just picked up. Whoop, whoop, whoop. There it is. And that's a little chromatic scale. So I will ask them when they pick that one out, for example, I will say, is this steps or are these jumps? And hopefully they'll tell me that they're steps. And then I'll ask them to clap the rhythm. And they will hopefully say ta, 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 ta. Hopefully. And then my little ones can't read this, like they don't know what that's going to sound like, but I will maybe play it or tongue trill it or lip trill it or sing it with a vowel. I'll ask them to choose a vowel, maybe that I can sing it to. So I'll sing it for them, and then they can sing it back, or they can lip trill it or tongue trill it or do their favorite word back. Maybe they can do I love spaghetti, I love spaghetti, or something like that. Or they can do something like this, which is a great breathing exercise. And again, I was doing some of these before, but the Full Voice has these that you can just download. So we might like trace I can't do it backwards, clearly, but say I'm doing this one. So I might do it with tongue trills, for example. So I might do all the way through, or maybe we'll do it with a vowel, like I said, or maybe we'll do it with their favorite, I don't know, siren sound, or maybe they'll do it sounding like a lion, or sounding like a kitty cat, or something like that. And then they can make their own as well, their own little fun breath mark breathing and singing guides. And I have lots of tools such as these fabrics in my studio. I actually did a little Facebook Live about using fabrics in the studio to help singers. So say, young singers especially, but say I want to work on, I don't know, high notes. So we want to work on singing high. I will ask them to throw this up in the air or pick a fabric and throw it up in the air, and then they have to follow the fabric with their singing voice. So if they throw it and then they, ah, 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 something like that. There's lots and lots of fun stuff that you can do with fabrics, actually. Lots of different tools. I always have a solfege corner, so we do lots of do mi, do mi songs, or solfege songs. They always have a solfege song going that they're working on, so they might be working on Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, trying to remember how it goes, or they might be working on other songs. Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Are you making corrections to their sounds as they're playing with? I mean, how do you then bring in that active lesson?
Yeah, so as we're working, with most of my young singers, I've developed a language so that I can ask them for example, I could ask them for a more pink color as opposed to their dark red color in their singing voice. I have paint chips as well, those paint chips that you can buy from the Home Depot or whatever. And, if they're over pressurizing, or they're yell singing, or they're singing with too much volume, then I'll say, you know what, this is your dark red color, and it's fantastic. But now I would like to hear what this light red color down here sounds like, or something like that.
That's great. I love that. All right, a few more questions are coming in. So Leslie Martin asks, I have discovered that some very young singing students are not necessarily experiencing a culture of singing at home and need
Mm.
to learn to pitch accurately. How do you assist them?
That's a great question and a great observation. There is not a lot of singing going on at home often. And often, as in, it used to be, everybody went to church, right? We all sang in church a long time ago, but we don't have that same culture anymore. So there's no expectation that children are actually hearing singing anymore. You're absolutely right about that. So I do have I will send home YouTube videos of um, you know choirs and great singers, and not necessarily adults, lots of kids. And so I will send home links to listen to, and I will try to guide young singers toward listening to singers on the radio, or in music theater, young music theater singers who are singing well and singing healthily and obviously singing in tune. Um, the tuning thing, though, is, and that's just to get the singing in their ear, just to get the sounds in their ear. The tuning, though, that's another thing. And I'll tell you, I find that most young singers, as they progress in lessons, and as we sort of work toward um, released breath and good vowel shapes, or efficient vowel shapes is maybe a better way to say it, and as we work toward uh, you know, lots of listening games and those kinds of things, they do tend to, if they come in not being able to sing well in tune, they do tend to find the tuning. And it's not an expectation for me early in the game. It's really not. I am hoping that by about 10 or 11 that things are going to start to settle, especially if they've been with me for a while. And then, of course, we may notice that things go crazy again as they go through puberty in girls and boys. So just have to be aware of that. But yeah, that's what I'm not necessarily concerned about tuning in the early years. Not in the way that I would be if it was a 16-year-old,
Right,
certainly.
right. And what about genre? Do
Hmm.
you require or suggest strongly that they explore genres?
Yes, and again, this is something I addressed in the blog that I wrote. Just finding repertoire for young singers can be tricky. There are so many great books out there these days, of course, and so I'm encouraging folk song, lots of folk song, because that tends to bridge the gap between what we would think of as a more classical song and our sort of more popular song. So many of the young singers, the only thing they're exposed to is popular songs, and that's fine. It is what it is, but that's all they're exposed to. So I do feel like it's part of my job to introduce them to lots of other kinds of music as well, and that for me includes music theater and includes the more classical. I mean, at 6 years old, is it more classical? Now it's more like folk songs and great songs from Sesame Street and that kind of thing. But yeah, so introducing them to this wider range of music is, again, I think it's sort of part of my mandate as a singing teacher and as a musician to just expose them to so many other forms of music that they're not necessarily going to be exposed to. So finding that repertoire, the Royal Conservatory of Music syllabus is a great tool. They don't have a lot of contemporary stuff on there, but there is a lot of stuff, a lot of great music in that syllabus that can be a starting off point. So you can look at that syllabus and find a great song that you love, and then look in the book that song is in, and you'll find lots of other great songs that are in that same collection, possibly. And then there are lots of some good music theater collections out there too, like some lovely the kids sing music theater, the Broadway. Oh, I can't remember what they're called now. but there are some music theater collections out there. I find the trickiest one to negotiate, for me anyway, is the CCM stuff. That's the trickiest stuff to negotiate. Just in terms of the requirements of the music itself, the rhythmic complexity, and the subject matter, of course. Yeah, so I find that, and sometimes the CCM stuff, even if it is great, the subject matter is great and all that stuff, the key is crazy or the range is outrageous or something. So I do find the CCM stuff is for me the trickiest to find some great stuff, but maybe there's a great resource out there that I don't know of. I would love someone to find that resource or make it.
Well, speaking of resources, two people have typed in. Amber Nicole Dilger writes, just wanted to mention the SingTrue app. I love you
yes.
with students of all ages to help them learn the skill of matching pitch.
Yep.
I especially love the visual bullseye it provides to show the pitch they're aiming for and then how far lower they are from their goal. I've not heard of that. So the SingTrue app.
And there are a bunch of, just going back to teaching students to read music. The Royal Conservatory of Music again has several, they're pretty new now, but several apps for the preparatory level, grade 1, grade 2 in the syllabus, and they're great. My little ones really love them, and they're like $3 or something. In American, that's like 2 cents. So,
And Dana Lentini says, but a comment. Thank you, Shannon and Kari, for sharing this wonderful information. History of teaching singing to certain age groups can be traced through the master-apprentice learning and teaching model. One of the best resources for this is described by editors Jessica O'Brien and Scott Harrison in the book Teaching Singing in the 21st Century.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So I'd love to, she says certain age groups. I'm wondering if it's specifically what we're talking about tonight or they somehow divide it up. But thank you for that resource.
Dana. And Dana, correct me if I'm wrong, Dana, but I think Dana did her master's thesis on working with young children. So she's got some good info.
Another question from Maria. What websites or where and how to get equipped more to become a better teacher?
Well, Teacher for Young Singers, there are lots of great websites out there. There's so much good information now. The internet's such a great resource. So the websites, again, I feel like a little bit of a broken record, but the Full Voice is fantastic. They have a lot of free resources there, so lots of downloadables. There's a whole download, like a 2-page download of exercises or activities to do with your singer when they've lost their voice. So you can just download that. You've got a singer coming in who probably shouldn't be at their singing lesson, but there they are and they can't sing. So you just take that out and go through it. Like, this great resources on there. And as well as podcasts. So lots of podcasts about, I've done one, Dana's done one. Several wonderful, wonderful teachers have worked with Nikki. Nikki Loney is the person who does the podcasts and one of the developers of the Full Voice. So lots of podcasts on there. I believe there's what's it called? Like a webinar as well. So in that webinar, there are just a ton of fantastic ideas about how to structure lessons, how to set up little spaces where you can, have those little intervals of time, tools that you can use. Great games, just lots of great resources at the Full Voice.
Wonderful.
And I'm not getting paid to do that either. I just really like her stuff.
Paying you a commission for all the promotion.
I know. I'm going to talk to her about that.
I love this question. How do you write homework for children? Do you take time out of your lesson to write it down? Do the parents sit at the lesson and take notes, or do you record lessons and ask them to practice with it?
I know all of those things. So I use my music staff, which has a great lesson recording area. So I'll type in a couple of little things, but in that, and then that goes to, it's an email. It ends up being an email that gets sent to the parents. So there's that. I will also record things in lesson. Absolutely. If there are exercises, or if the parent can't help a student learn a melody, I will just record the melody in my lesson and email it to them, or have the parent record it on their phone. At this age, the parents are usually sitting in the lesson. Yes, I should mention that at that age. And I mean, they're usually just, on their phone. It's not like they're involved in the lesson, but just having them there, I could say, oh, can you remember to blah, blah, blah. And the other thing that I do is I have a whole bunch of stickies, like lots of different colors, those stickies, and I'll just put it on the book, on the page that they need to be working on. So in the full voice, I'll just put it right on there and say, like, do number 1, 2, and 3 on this page. And if they're working on a song, I'll just put it right in that sticky on that song on that page, and just, sing the song with a tongue trill. Sing the first verse, I don't know, clap the whole first verse with using ta and ti ta or whatever. Just, yeah. They may not be able to read it, but the parent can. And the parent then learns to look for that, that little sticky to see what they're supposed to be doing.
And you don't mind whether or not the parents stay in the lessons.
I don't mind at all. In fact, I love it when the parents sit in. For the most part, I have negotiated parents not sitting in lessons every once in a while. From about 13, 12, 13, depending on the student, is when parents generally tend to not sit in on the lesson. But keep in mind, if it's a half-hour lesson, what's the parent going to do,
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So once they're up to a longer lesson time than the parent, it's a little bit, it doesn't make sense for the parent to sit there anyway. So, yeah. But I have teenage students that the parents sit in on their lessons, but they just work. They just sit in the corner and work.
And Jeff Costello makes the point that he likes it when parents of kids sit in too, because as a male teacher, he often requires it. So I think
Jeff, you're absolutely right. That is a whole other factor there. You're absolutely right.
Colleen Barham asks, what would a typical lesson for a 9-year-old look like for you? Great question.
Yeah, great question. So 9 years old, they are likely at about the second, maybe third level in the full voice. And so we may be starting with some breathing, combined with movement, combined with rhythmic warm-ups. So some kind of body movement that involves rhythmic breathing. Likely start with something like that, and then transition whatever that warm-up is into some kind of singing warm-up, and then transition that into doing some solfege work, so interval work, where they are making up intervals and I have to sing them, or they're making up small lines, small melodies with their hand signs, and I have to sing them, which sometimes I don't do very well, but most of the time I can get it. And then, or we go back and forth where I'm making something up and they sing it, or they're singing. At 9 they should be able to, at 9 they'll be doing minor scales and modes with their hand signs. So something to work through that kind of ear training. We're doing intervals, of course, as well. Then I also incorporate, I'm almost always teach from the Royal Conservatory of Music syllabus. So likely we would also then do 1 or 2 of the exercises for whatever grade they're in. 9 years old, let me think now, probably about grade 2, give or take. So 1 or 2 of the exercises that is part of that grade for that syllabus. And then I'm constantly thinking ahead for whatever the repertoire is that we're working on, and also whatever the technical skill is that I'm hoping they're working on as well. So that will be built into the warm-ups and the technical work as well. And then if there's a tricky rhythm, for example, in whatever piece they're working on, or there's a tricky interval, say, or a tricky little passage that isn't working well, or perhaps it's in an interesting a range that we're working on, or text that we're working on, whatever that is, that's all going to come into the once we've done the sort of warm up and ear training stuff, that's going to sort of morph into what we're doing in before we actually get to the repertoire proper. Mm-hmm. And then moving into repertoire. And when we're working on repertoire, we're working on, so many different things, as you know. We could be working on diction. We could be working on characterization. We could be working on just breath management. We could be working on breath flow. We could be working on vowel shapes. We could be, there's so many different things to incorporate in a piece. And usually, again, I'm trying to make sure that I can get as many things done as possible. It's the same thing working with teens. So I would have, if they're working on, let me think of a song, I don't know, maybe from Annie, I don't know, something like that. If they're working on maybe, and all that they know is to like yell that song, then maybe we are working on singing it with the colors, for example, or maybe we're working on singing it with the feel of this fabric while we sing it, rather than singing it with like feeling or something like that.
And do you have a general guideline between, this is from Chelsea Cox, how much you emphasize specific voice technique with the young students versus more general musicianship? Do you
That's
have
a great question. What I find that I'm very rarely talking specific technique with young singers, very rarely. And I'm always incorporating that general musicianship. I'm always incorporating the two. So if they do have a specific issue, say they are not inhaling well, say they're just not inhaling well, so they're doing, or not doing a full inhalation every time. So that's a specific technical skill that I'm hoping to teach. So we need to do something like, maybe they are breathing like as if they were a lion. What would a lion breathe like? A lion would be like, oh, when it breathes. Or maybe they're breathing like Santa Claus, or maybe they're breathing, something along those lines. So then that becomes part of the general musicianship. So then in the song, for example, then we're going to be incorporating lion breathing into the whole song. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm sure it does. It does to me. I'm sure it does to others. Yeah. Especially those that work with the very young.
Yes.
As we're approaching the end of our time, this is a great segue to the end. Colleen reminds us that on Facebook is the Voice Teachers for Young Singers group.
Yes. So. And that one's also on my blog. So yeah, exactly. I think the 4 main things that I talked about in the blog in terms of being a better teacher for young singers, one of them is to understand the physiological differences. And I did a link to one of Jennifer Williams's papers, which just gives you all of a lot of good information about what appropriate expectations are for young singers in terms of sound quality. Mm-hmm. And then, and in terms of, agility and what they're going to be able to accomplish, essentially. And then one of the other links was for community, to find a community of other teachers who are also teaching young singers. And that's a great one on Facebook. You can ask anything you want. There are no dumb questions. And there are lots and lots and lots of teachers who also teach young singers, and lots of great ideas on there. And the other one is to find appropriate repertoire. And that there are a couple of links there, one to the Conservatory of Music syllabus, and one to Nate Plummer's guide to songs, music theater songs for young singers. And then the other one is, finding a curriculum. And so then, of course, that's the link to the Full Voice.
Gosh, Shannon, you have given so many resources tonight for the people listening. So I cannot thank you enough. That's incredible. And some wonderful creative ideas that it helps to see and hear someone talk about it in person rather than read about it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's invaluable to everyone. So Thank you for joining us and sharing your generosity of time and wealth of knowledge with all of us. Thank you so much. I want to remind people that the next NATS chat will be April 8th, and it will be with John Nix, and we'll talk about the hole in the sky. Teaching center. They are their own special breed. So I look forward to talking to John, and also again to thank Inside View Press and to remind you about the 55th National NATS Conference in Vegas this summer in June, and the deadline is April 1st for early registration. And Shannon, of course, I'll see you at the Bernard Conference at USC in May. And please remember the Northwest Voice Conference, Art and Science of the Performing Voice here in Seattle, of which I'm an organizer of. And so lots going on in our community. It's a wonderful time to be a voice teacher.
I agree.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. We're getting lots of thank yous come in. And so it's late for you. Good night, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us. See you in April.